So, welcome everyone. I get a little frog in my throat, but that's actually nothing. Once again, welcome to, this is our third live stream. Still, the world is in a very dangerous situation. For a while, New York was supposed to be going down the curve, I would say, but in fact, there's been a new uptake of both infections and actually tragic fatalities. I hope that you are all safe. I hope that you are all well, and we must keep this social distancing. The governor of New York just extended the basically rules that he had outlined for staying at home, not traveling, up through May 15th now. And whether they will actually extend further is something we don't know. We hope they won't, of course, all of us, but we must anyway be vigilant. So once again, welcome. Now, can you hear me? That's very important. Okay, great. Had many questions after, oh, 1 second. Yes, okay. This is very much just, once again, our mom and pop little enterprise here. So you have to bear with us, of course. So had many questions regarding all sorts of both very direct issues with what I was talking about in the last live stream, and also very tangential issues. They range from basically, what is an interpretation? Shall we just try to follow what the composer has written, or can we actually have our own voice in the music? Also about expression on the clarinet, and how much the fact that Mühlfeld used vibrato influenced perhaps Brahms, and what does that mean for expression on the clarinet? And together with that, how come in the classical world vibrato is somehow frowned upon on the clarinet? Okay, that's very specific. Also, simply about breath support, and about overall tension in the body, and many questions. And finally, very interesting question, because I was speaking so much about the appoggiatura, was how do we find expression in contemporary music? This is music which is not made up of, I would call, standard harmonic progressions, a kind of communal harmonic language. And this is a very big subject. Oh, 1 second.
I told you I want to
What's that?
message Japanese.
Maybe we cut out one thing. Back there? We're okay? Yeah? Okay. 1 second. Yes.
So, I don't want to show you the fight between us, but I want to tell the one thing to the Japanese audience.
That's right.
日本の皆さん、こんばんは。どうありがとうございます。ご質問がありましたらどうぞ日本語でタイプをなさってください。私が訳させていただきます。全部訳すわけにいかないんですけれども、英語で申し訳ありませんが、よろしくお願いします。
そうです。For those of you who are wondering what Ayako was saying, she was just mentioning to our Japanese viewers that they can ask questions in Japanese, and we will answer them as well. And in fact, for others, if for instance German or French is more comfortable, please feel free to write your questions in those languages, and I will try as well as I can. Actually, also in Russian as well. I will try to answer them also. Okay. So, how do we start? I think I will start by going back to my point, which had to do with the fact that interpreting music is a physical act, not simply an act of sort of looking and thinking, okay, this is louder, this is softer, this is faster, this is slower, etc., etc. But it is something that we must feel in our bodies. And this also has to do with issues of tension, which I was asked about, and also with issues of what's called breath support. Now, I don't have time right now to discuss everything in detail, but I will give a little glimpse about many things, and then when we come back in a future live stream, I will actually spend more time perhaps on these very specifically clarinetistic issues. Although I should say they really have to do with all wind instruments, and to a large extent with all musical activity. Okay, so what do I mean by the fact that interpretation has to be physical? And I start with the appoggiatura, and I've got several questions asking to explain more about this. Now, of course, appoggiatura, the Italian word, comes from appoggiare, which means to press against or to lean against. And this is very important in music because the leaning is what creates expression. Just like if we're speaking, as I said, leaning, if I say, oh, and the leaning creates expression, there would be no expression. So I say the leaning, and I actually focus on the leaning, which communicates what the word means. And this has to do very much with what I want to explain about musical expression. Okay, so first about the appoggiatura. So if we come back here and we go, we feel that has a leaning which then goes into the texture. So if you play, there's nothing but then that way. And the point is, when we express that physically. So even on the piano, where virtually once you press the note, you have no control in a certain sense. We still have that D if we press, and then that gives the timing for that. Now if I go to the clarinet about this, let me see. Is this right? No. I have to find it. I think I should use this one. Perhaps this is a little better. Okay. Let's see. All right. It's, I think, okay. Maybe I use this. Let's see. I think maybe I use this one. Okay. So, I play. Something like that, of course, from our Brahms E-flat Sonata, which we spoke about last time. Uh-oh. As I mentioned, as we play this way, Brahms has basically a double appoggiatura, which then goes, then, this way. So this double appoggiatura creates a lot of tension and resolves here to our F or concert E flat in a very beautiful way. But how do we play that here? So first of all, the sense of moving to that, I feel myself with my fingers. Even though I'm not changing the note, I feel like this way, squeezing here. So that. And then the fingers work with the air and the embouchure to create the appoggiatura. This way. And in back of all of this is rhythm. And by rhythm, I do not mean simply 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I'm done. But a feeling of 1 and E that way, so that you feel how the motion works, just as if I would be moving this way, for instance. And then as it goes, I move back. If any of you have questions about this, please make sure you don't hesitate to ask. Okay. So, what does this mean about actually playing? First of all, when we were talking about tension, or when I got the questions about tension, I was wondering, the point is that when we are playing, we are not relaxed. Just like when we are standing up or even sitting down, we are not relaxed. In fact, when we are living, we are not relaxed. Because many things are happening. If I'm standing up, for instance, here, their muscles are sort of pushing me one way, the other way, the other way, the other way, just so that I stand up and I don't fall down. Like that. When I'm moving, of course, again, I'm not relaxed. So, what can people mean when they say you must relax? I think it means just that muscles which are not involved in what you're actually doing should in a certain way not interfere. And what that would do is create a kind of unnecessary or unuseful, I would say, isometric tension. So if I'm playing, there I squeeze and I lift the finger this way, and they are not at all relaxed. But if I play this way, that creates a kind of isometric tension which gets in the way of expression rather than having the muscles which are, and the effort of the body to create the expression, having tension in that aspect of our, I would say, physiology. Yeah. So even when I'm playing a scale, for instance, even if I play that way, when I'm moving the right hand, even the first note, I'm actually squeezing. And this is lifting the fingers, but as I lift the fingers, I feel that in the left hand as well. And as I move up through the left hand, the right hand is actually participating, so it's not relaxed. Oh, what's that? No. It's moving and feeling the expression of the music that the left hand is in a certain sense producing. I play an arpeggio. I'm pulling the clarinet. That way. I play Brahms. As that note goes on, I go one, and then our appoggiatura. And as I lift this finger here, the left hand actually feels the tension of that G or concert F. That way. Okay. So this is basically what I wanted to mention about the physicality, I should say, of musical expression. And I mentioned also about musical interpretation, because interpretation is basically the connection of expression throughout a composition. So it's, in a certain way, I would call it long-term expression. Now, what should I deal with now? I will segue to another subject. Everything is really related. And this has to do with knowledge, because I also got a question saying, well, must we know so much? in order to play, or can we just feel playing? And I feel, you see, that that's actually a false dichotomy. Knowledge actually helps feeling, and feeling helps one to understand what one tries to know. It's a little bit convoluted, but I think it's interesting. So, now I go back to Brahms. Yeah. And I mentioned also how Brahms used these symbols, these hairpins, to indicate time, and I have here many little things that I wanted to mention. There's the, for instance, when the conductor, Georg Henschel, asked Brahms for metronome marks for his German Requiem, Brahms answered to him, "In my view, the metronome isn't worth much. At least so far as I know, many a composer has withdrawn his metronome markings sooner or later. Those which are found in the Requiem are there because good friends talked me into them. For I myself have never believed that my blood and a mechanical instrument go well together. The so-called elastic tempo is not a new discovery, after all, and it, as to many another, one should attach a condiscrezione, as he said. Is this an answer? I know of none better. I know, however, that I indicate my tempos in the heading without numbers, modestly, but with the greatest care and clarity." And the reason for this, of course, is that expression for Brahms and tempo were intimately connected. So you can say, okay, this is at 120 and that's it. No, but they can say that this is allegretto grazioso. And perhaps that can admit different metronome marks, perhaps even for different measures. But it should have the character of allegretto grazioso. Now, how do you know that? That's an interesting question. We feel it. I have another quotation. I'm going to mention several because it's very interesting. Charles Stanford, who's a wonderful English composer, he wrote about Brahms. He said, "Brahms' tempo was very elastic when he played, but he never allowed his liberties with the time to interfere with the general balance. They were the true nature of rubato." And he said he loathed having his slow movements played in an inexorable four-square, very cut and dry tempo. I will also read a quotation of the wonderful pianist, Fanny Davies, who I mentioned earlier. And she is the one who actually really brought out the fact that when Brahms played, when he met these kind of markings, his hairpin markings, he would take time or he would speed ahead or whatever. So this is one of her quotations. The sign of this sort of double hairpin, as used by Brahms, often occurs when he wishes to express great sincerity and warmth. allied not only to tone, but to rhythm also. He would linger not on one note alone, but on a whole idea, as if unable to tear himself away from its beauty. He would prefer to lengthen a bar or phrase, rather than spoil it by making up the time into a metronomic bar. So again, what we have is the structure of the expression creates the tempo, or I should say the tempos, tempi. Okay, and I will actually now go back to the piano and show a little bit about this, what's happening. Again, let me see. I still go to the E-flat sonata. And remember, the Bach chorale, because this is very important. Now, this is a question. I have to see if I can find this, because for the people who have scores, maybe I have here, I should give you this one. I should give you measure numbers, it's easier. But this old edition that I like to play from doesn't have them. It's not something that, here we go. Yeah, okay, that's very good. So this will be measure 47, and this is just an example of one thing, of course. But now this has to do with feeling and knowledge, and the reason why knowledge can actually help feeling and help understanding the music. So, for those of you who actually have the music here, you will see that toward the end of the measure, there is this double hairpin. And I'll play for everybody. It's this. Is that way. Now let's look at that carefully. And first of all, we have the hairpin, and we think of that as crescendo diminuendo. We have something very odd, because Brahms writes a forte piano on the next downbeat, this bass D. So you can really play something like this here, maybe. Oops, I can't even play it correctly that way because it makes so little sense. So what I hear often is maybe people don't bother with forte piano there, or do something other weird kind of business. But if we think of this as time, then we have a stretch which lands on this forte piano and then goes on. Now there's something else, though, which would be very good to know. And that is, in Brahms' manuscript, there are slight differences in the placement of things like his hairpins. So this is kind of knowledge which, in fact, can help us greatly understanding, in fact, this passage. And that is because what is very clear in his manuscript is that this hairpin is only on the last three notes. And that is what? This is our chorale motif. And then we have more knowledge, as I was talking last time about how Brahms is in a certain sense searching in this piece and finally finds home, or finds his E-flat tonic at the very end. What do we have here? We have this here. We have, and then this chorale. And it's like, yes, I went home. I'm back. And then, oh, this is D major, not E flat. I'm in the wrong town. So we look at the music here, and now we can feel, and this is feeling, what this forte piano means. So, we have once again finally we came to our dominant. So it's as if you're walking and you go, ah, oh. You look familiar, but you're not. Sorry. And you go back. So, I mean, my explanation perhaps is a little melodramatic, but in a way very accurate. And that way, we understand what this passage is about. Now, I go back to the first sonata a little bit. And then we go to toward the beginning, and we have this. Once again, if we look at the manuscript, we find a small difference which explains this passage much better. Now, I don't have the measure number for this, but I think that you can all find it, if those of you who have scores. It's, of course, the first statement of the secondary theme that we have. Okay, now, what is written in all published editions, the first hairpin goes to here in the clarinet, and then from the F, or sometimes even earlier, that F, or concert E flat, I should say, it goes down that way. But in the manuscript, Brahms is very clear that that hairpin begins only here. From there. Now, why is this important? This is important because of structure. And if we see that, we understand this, then we can feel the structure of this melody, of this section, because what Brahms is doing is he has two kinds of three. One expands and one contracts. So, we have first 1, 2, 3, combining or feeling a tension between these two threes, the larger three and the small three, because of the bass here. So we have this happening. That way. So again, this knowledge helps us feel correctly, or I could say, feel what Brahms is trying to express. And that brings up another issue, which has to do with, well, do we have our own interpretations? Do we have our own creativity as performers? Or shall we just look to try to reproduce what the composer has in mind? I always find that very odd kind of sort of statement to reproduce what the composers have in mind, of course, because we don't actually know. But what we can see is we can find elements in the music which I call objective elements, such as these different threes that we have here. And I'll even show you more the sense of three that Brahms does. So for instance, the end of the piece, we have 1, So we see this sense of expanding three, and this is structure. But the structure creates the expression. This is objective. This is like if you have a building there, and you have the skeleton, this, that's there. How you decorate it is up to you in a certain sense. So the structure allows you the freedom to do something which is your own and which is compelling, because it is part of the piece itself. Okay, now I've sort of thrown that out. I want to go to something very different, which has to do with the issue of vibrato. Now that also, I must say, maybe is not as different as we think, because that has to do with expression. And we got a very interesting question, which was, please demonstrate the difference between the boxwood instrument and the regular instrument. Now, I have to say that what I'm playing now is also boxwood. Buksbaum, I would say. Tsuge in Japanese. So, what is more important than actually the wood, although the wood is important, I must say, is the kind of instrument. And here I have a copy of the instrument which Ottensteiner made for Richard Mühlfeld. This copy was made by Jochen Siegelke, and really has very accurately reproduced the bore dimensions, key placement, and everything like that, and the mouthpiece as well, although the later mouthpiece that he used. So let me try this. And this instrument is notable for a few things. The mouthpiece is notable because it's very conical. This way. So my apologies for the non-clarinetists perhaps, but it could be interesting for you as well. And this is very, very important. I mean, the bore is a large bore, but what is most important, I believe, are the large tone holes. They are unusually big, and they're much larger than what was standard at the time. Okay, let me see. Is this? I have two possible reads. Well, I find, because of these very large tone holes, it's very difficult to actually switch from a modern instrument or even from other period instruments which have much smaller tone holes to this clarinet. I don't know. Maybe you should vote. Which reed is better? I think I'd play that one. Okay. Well, as I'm doing this, I'd like to say that of course, Mühlfeld nowadays it is remarked that what was most interesting about him is that he played with the vibrato. That really comes from a very, what am I doing here? Let me see. Okay, that's good, but I will come back. I need to get a book now, which I think is right here. Yes. This is the wonderful clarinetist, English clarinetist, Jack Brymer, who wrote this book about the clarinet, which is fairly sort of standard now for everyone who wants to know about the instrument. He mentions this here. He's in, for those who want to know, it's in page 207. And he wrote, just before World War II, a question was put to a very old viola player, sometime conductor of the Duke of Devonshire's orchestra, about the playing of Mühlfeld. The old man had occasionally been called in by Joachim to play in his quartet, and on several occasions had played the Brahms quintet with the great Mühlfeld. Of the clarinetist's playing, he was most enthusiastic, saying that three things mainly struck in his memory. He used two clarinets, A and B flat for the slow movement to simplify the gypsy section. He had a fiery technique with a warm tone and a big vibrato. Asked again by a startled questioner if he didn't mean to say rubato, the old man looked puzzled. No, vibrato, much more than Joachim, as much as the cellist, whose name was Hausmann. That's my. So, this is where I've found reference to Mühlfeld's vibrato. Of course, this was probably quite late in Mühlfeld's career. But what is most interesting to me is when I've gone through reviews of Mühlfeld's playing, when he was playing with Brahms, when he was playing with other people, I have not been able to find one really citation which mentions Mühlfeld's vibrato. What instead I get is this, and I will read a few things here. Let me see. Again, I try to find this. Sorry for taking time for that. Right. I think it's here. I'm trying to look for it. I apologize, I'm not better organized. But, okay, composition. Last movement. I can't find it. I have a lot of quotations I put in here. Let me here. Ah, yes. Okay, finally I did. And, often reviews of the time were very, very, very flamboyantly colorful. So, 1892, the Viennese critic Max Kalbeck, after hearing Mühlfeld played, he actually wrote the following. He said, "He is rumored to be in possession of immortal reeds, which were cut from the cane of the nymph Syrinx, was transformed into Gaia to protect her from the amorous Pan's advances." Ooh, that's quite something. Another one, and this is actually rather interesting. This is 1897 in Berlin. He freed his instrument from Minerva's spell, who had tested it before reflecting waters and had found it disfiguring and unsuitable for the education of the youth. I think this critic did not particularly like the clarinet before he had heard Mühlfeld. Another one, now this is also a letter of Brahms to Clara Schumann, where he says, "There is no way to play the clarinet more beautifully than this Mr. Mühlfeld, Herr Mühlfeld does." And Clara, writing back, "How wonderfully he plays it, as if he were made for your piece of music. What incredible simplicity, what refined musical understanding." These quotations go on and on and on and on, like that. But no specific mention of vibrato. What you do have about Mühlfeld's playing is how the registers, the low register could be like a cello or a bassoon, high register like a flute. So I had to do with many colors of the sound, and that's what struck people. Now, I think what that means, though, is that most likely the playing with vibrato was not a big deal. It was not something that people took notice about and were shocked over or whatever. Now we come back to the clarinet, and I can explain a little more about that, because the Ottensteiner instrument, perhaps because of the large tone holes, perhaps because of the large bore, whatever, the mouthpiece shape, has a wonderful instability. And instability is something which can lead to flexibility. And in this case, also to flexibility of tone, where we have, for instance, that way. This is, it has great range of color possibilities in this instrument, and what I found playing it, and I should just make a little aside, that the interest that I have in playing period instruments, playing historical instruments, which go back to the beginnings of the clarinet, through the Ottensteiner, and even later instruments, which, including buffet clarinets from the turn of the century, etc., have to do with gaining knowledge. So that I do not necessarily just have my own idea, okay, this is my tone, this is this, no. But I feel from these instruments what the instruments give me. And in this case, this got a little dry, but anyway, it kind of has a natural vibrato. And I think that this is what is most important. So I have a feeling that maybe with this we stop now, and I will continue with contemporary music and how we find expression in contemporary music next time, which I hope will be next Friday. And in the meantime, please be well, be safe, and again, any questions, comments, observations you have, I'm more than happy to receive them in several languages, although certain languages I'm sure that I would have no idea about, and I apologize to those speakers. So once again, you all take care, be careful, be safe. Thank you.